Okay, let's get this thing started. A little bit late this time, but there were important discussions about cicadas to be had. Okay. Okay. Pins for the win. Just play a little bit of blitz while I wait to see if anyone bites. Excellent. Kind of an awkward place for the queen. I think I have to start annoying it fairly soon. Queens are there for irritating after all. Castle. to remember this is Blitz. I don't usually play Blitz. Jetzt zuschauen. Seem to have created some difficulties. There's a little tactical motif going on. With any luck, I might be able to get a free queen in a second. I think that bishop is coming down to take on e6. At which point I take back with the bishop. Yes. So far, it checks out. Now, this doesn't work as well as I thought because that's check. The queen might decide to stay there anyway. Thank you. That's so nice of you. Deal.
먹으면 홍초 높고 경당이 먹으면 불꽃이 친다. 본용이 모든 군 기록해가는 우리를 누가 막으랴. 존재 또 존재 색색은 없게 존재 또 존재. 힘을 믿고서 강해진 우리 불태우는 승리를 계속 이어서 굳건한 승리 하나오리라. 존재 또 존재 세상 무너게 존재 또 존재 용기 뱉대 우리가 이끄는 사회주의를 힘차게 존재한다. 수령과 인민이 하나로 뭉친 한국의 이기성 꽃을 저었다. 진국의 위대한 강이 달리는 이 길은 승리하는 길. 존재 또 존재
In the middle.
세상을 높이 존재 또 존재 용기 뱉대 우리가 이끄는 사회주의를 힘차게 전진해간다. 존재 또 존재 세상을 높이 존재 또 존재 용기 뱉대 우리가 이끄는 사회주의를 힘차게 전진해간다.
So I'm really not interested in it teaming up with the queen there.
침략의 무리 덤벼든다면 우린 용감히 접으시리라. 원숭이 명령 가슴에 안고 열정의 총창 들었다. 평화감물이 귀중해도 절대로 후가를 하지 않으리. 우리
조국은
Righto.
어머니 정든 품 나라나 키워준 내 삶의 젖줄기 조용히 그 이름 불러만 봐도 안겨준 사랑의 눈끝 젖는 조국은 나의 어머니 조국은 떠나서 못 살 뿐 내 희망 꽃 펴준 행복의 젖줄기 그대의 품에서 눈이 더 따뜻해 낭만도 웃으며 헤쳐가리 조국은 나의 어머니 같이 하니 내 몸 아껴둘 목숨이 떠 있으랴
one of my most loyal viewers of the like 3 that are currently in existence, seems to be unable to get enough of me having a go at Caleb Maupin. But you wouldn't want, and I enjoy it. I mean, the guy's so full of shit and so just utterly comical, like bizarre with his fucking mannerisms, that it is entertaining. But you wouldn't want a steady diet of it. I'm gonna move over to something else, maybe something a little bit more topical as well. I wonder what the talking excrement sculptures over at PragerU have to say about current events. Oh, holy shit. We've got breaking down the Israel-Palestinian conflict. How long is this? With PragerU. Israel expert David Brog they're going to interview. So let's look this guy up. Never heard of him. Oh, he is the former executive director of Christians United for Israel. That is an American anti-Semitic organization who support Israel for the explicit reason that they want to use it as sort of a Latter-day Theresienstadt, sort of a holding pen for Jews, because as part of their end-time prophecies, they have to kill us all if we don't convert. Otherwise, Jesus won't show up and tell us all about loving thy neighbor in a sermon that I'm sure will be well overdue at that time. But yeah, so that's David Brog. This is the guy they're going to interview. So you can see, I'm sure we're going to get a factually accurate portrayal of the fucking genocide that's going on there right now. Let's find out.
And we're live.
Are we live?
No.
Oi, bruv. You got the PragerU podcast?
What is that?
Little Cockney. I'm a Peaky Blinder.
I like it.
Oh, fucking hell. First of all, Peaky Blinders aren't Cockney. They're Brummies. Okay, so... what the fuck? Let's see what's going on next. Seems to have lost my connection, but I seem to be back.
I like it.
I actually
Okay.
like the Peaky Blinders.
I love the Peaky Blinders. Give me some more water in here.
I can't quite do
Little
that
thirsty.
accent, but I can give
Are
you
we gonna
something
do
from the
this
UK.
for
Can't
long?
quite
She
do that.
sounds like a proper British lass over
Yes,
there.
I can do a proper
Oh,
one.
from Manchester, huh?
Yes, maybe Manchester.
I don't know where Manchester is.
No,
all my,
neither do
all our
I.
UK fans are watching. Tune in. We got Will Witt here, joined with my co-host. Is that right?
Yes, your co-host, Amal Ebanobi. Nice to be here.
And we have a very special guest today. We have David Brog, who is an author and also the executive director of the Maccabee Task Force, which...
Oh god, that is so fucking insulting. Okay, so does David Brog, who I'd never heard of, let me get the resolution up where it belongs on here so you don't have to be squinting. And we really don't need to see PragerU's fucking chat. Okay, so the guy in the genocidal anti-Semitic pro-Israel group, yeah, that one, is now the executive director of something called the Maccabee Task Force? Like, do you know who the fucking Maccabees are? Like, okay, this is the story behind Hanukkah. Basically, the Greeks occupied Judea and wanted to Hellenize everything, and the Judean upper class were more or less okay with it. But a lot of just, peasants were not at all thrilled with this, and they became the Maccabees, from the word makav, which means hammer. And they kicked the Greeks out, and they rededicated the temple, which had been turned into a stable. And it turned out they had more oil than they expected. This was the Hanukkah miracle. This is why it's called a minor holiday. But yeah, so literally a guy who is part of an organization that wants Jews to convert or die, although they're coy about that when the press are around, is in a task force named after a fucking Jewish ancient Jewish resistance group that fought against people who wanted Jews to fucking convert or die. That's okay. I have a feeling this is actually going to get worse. So
Works
bear
on
with me
promoting
here. I'm gonna
pro-Israel
go out.
values on college campuses. So thanks for coming on the show today.
It's great to be with you guys. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Well, we're a big
Oh,
fan of you. If you guys haven't seen
that
his
tells us
5-minute
all you
video
need
he
to know
did with
about all of them.
PragerU, definitely check that out as well after this is over. But what I wanted to do, you are, I would say, an expert on all these things, Israel and Palestine, all this going on right now. And there's
Yes, we'll see
a
about
ton of
that.
confusion in the news and just there's so much noise, especially when it's, halfway around the world. People in America don't always have the best idea of what's going on with it. And so
Yes, especially the ones who turn to fucking PragerU.
what
for
I
the
wanted to do with
information.
this today, talking to you, is not just ask basic questions, but I wanted to break down what essentially the left says and use that so you can answer what the left says so that people watching can take that and then use it in their arguments. And
Okay, so what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be breaking down what these dickheads say. These genocidally anti-Semitic dickheads. Well, I don't know about the hosts of this thing. I mean, who knows? I don't know who the fuck they are. Probably just the run-of-the-mill PragerU assholes. But this other guy, yeah, I mean, genocidal anti-Semitic organization right in his CV. Yeah, so I'm going to be breaking down what they're talking about, how completely full of shit they are, and if you ever run across this bullshit, you'll be a little bit better equipped maybe to debunk it.
and means to change minds. So the first thing, just before we even get into that, just what is your take on the situation right now going on in Israel? Do you see things getting resolved and getting better, or do you see it as it's only going to escalate worse from here?
You know, I'm kind of wishing I'd brought the bourbon down.
And why would you, and why?
Well, it's hard to tell. Israel had a number of operations last night. We'll see if they feel they've inflicted sufficient losses to Hamas or not.
Okay. Now, this is a thing that you'll see. It's sort of like somebody said this. I saw it on Twitter, and it was really good, and it's so true. Somebody said the U.S. and Israel like to use Hamas much the way that white supremacists in the U.S., i.e., cops and people who would be cops but have other jobs the rest of the time, used for terms, talking about loitering or thugs or anything to do with crime or anything like that. It's the same thing. Hamas is being used here to refer to all Palestinians, particularly all the Palestinians who are in Gaza. And when you talk about inflicting damage on Hamas, what you're talking about is murdering defenseless Palestinian civilians in Gaza, where, let's just remind everybody, now, Gaza has been under a total blockade since 2006, the last time Israel and the U.S. allowed any kind of democratic or even quasi-democratic election to take place for the Palestinians, because they didn't vote for the people the U.S. and Israel wanted. And so they have been blocking most food, humanitarian supplies, and everything that's needed in order to reconstruct the infrastructure which Israel and the U.S. have bombed to shit. And I will be saying Israel and the U.S. because Israel could not do this without the U.S. Those are U.S. planes they're using. It's just the pilots are Israeli, and some of them are probably also from the U.S. as well, because a lot of Israelis are. So, yeah, I mean, Gaza at this point has basically no potable water because the U.S. and Israel destroyed their sewage treatment plant, did not allow it to be rebuilt. Similarly, their power grid is wrecked. Their agriculture has both been wrecked repeatedly, and... Oh, have I got somebody in here? No, I didn't even know what the hell that sound was. Oh well. Not just because that gets bombed and the army just sort of destroys their farms and things, but because Israel literally keeps on claiming an ever larger buffer zone, which is to say an exclusion area of the already most densely populated area in the entire fucking world. in which no Palestinians are allowed to go on pain of death, and that's actually the overwhelming majority of their farmland is affected by that, and to some extent, the UN was saying years ago already that Gaza was going to become uninhabitable probably by 2020, and judging from the reports one gets from Gaza, that yeah, that's exactly what's happened. It is totally uninhabitable, and there is no end in sight. One remarkable thing was, human rights groups actually had to fight in court for years to get a document on the exact parameters of the blockade, of what, like, food was allowed in. And eventually it's called the Red Lines document. Look up Israel Red Lines document, you'll find it. I believe it's been translated into English. It's been a while since I looked at this. What they did was work out the absolute bare minimum caloric requirement for survival of every person, adult and child, living in the Gaza Strip. And that would be fucked up enough, except that they have never let in as much food as their own figures say would be necessary for the bare minimum for survival. That's the situation in Gaza. So, and the thing is, okay, there have been two already just major massacres by the U.S. and Israel in Gaza. There was the one that was timed around the U.S. election cycle, 2008-2009. That was called Operation Cast Lead Oferet Yitzukah, which, I mean, was absolutely horrifying. I was actually involved in translating the UN fact-finding mission's report on that. And the result is I had to read all these detailed findings about it. And I'll tell you, that was horrifying. I mean, it was just... It was some of the most traumatic reading I've ever had. Thing is, the one after that, 2014, that was even worse. That was way worse. Oh, hello, Witchy Princess. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Okay, so now here's the fucked up thing. Here is the thing to take away from this, if nothing else. Okay, people in Gaza who have lived through this, because everyone over 13 has been through already like 2 major fucking massacres, are saying they've never seen anything like this. Think about how fucking bad it has to be for people in Gaza to be saying that they've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's just deeply fucked up, and it is, so this guy, you'll just see what kind of a ghoul he is if you have this background, just in case you didn't catch it. Anyone who's watching it who hasn't. Yeah, because the pogroms that are going on, this guy, God, what's his name? David Brog, something... Brog, yes, David Brog. This is some fucker that that PragerU has brought on to explain the Israel-Palestinian conflict to us. And his big thing was he was in a genocidal anti-Semitic group called Kufi, Christians United for Israel, for a while, and top like an executive director or something there. And now, just because he wants to show that his chutzpah is boundless, he's the executive director of something called the Maccabee Task Force, which is about bringing genocidal anti-Palestinian propaganda to the campuses, and he's going to show us his stylings. But so it's so you look at the fucking videos of these pogroms going on in Alid, in Jerusalem, and now in Al-Fahm, and you see the people carrying out these pogroms with the aid of the cops and in some cases the military as well. It's a fucking festival environment. It's like those postcards of the lynchings that you see sometimes in the States with where people are fucking having a picnic around it. That's the atmosphere. Meanwhile, in the fucking Gaza concentration camp, which is what it is, it has watchtowers, it has barbed wire, it has fucking... they have absolutely no control over who's allowed in and out. And Israel can just invade them. Well, invade is weird because they're already occupied, but send the tanks in at will. I mean, Gazan Twitter has been all just people fucking saying goodbye. I mean, it is absolutely horrifying, and so That's we're gonna see how ghoulish this guy really is and how he can manage to try to put a positive spin on this.
We'll see where things go. But the big picture to me is this, and this
We'll
is
see where things go. Like that already. I mean,
there's always a pretext for violence. People can always find an excuse for violence, and we've had a lot of pretexts thrown up in this instance.
I'm guessing he's about to throw up some pretexts all over us right now.
The overall big picture remains the same, which is you have a terrorist organization, Hamas, firing rockets at Israeli civilian centers.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, see, this is fairly standard. The chronology is being reversed here because the pogroms started first. The pogroms in Sheikh Jarrah, in Fahm. Well, Fahm started last night, and Alid, where the legendary Palestinian rap group Dam just like fucking escaped by the hair of their teeth, or skin of their teeth, whatever the expression is. Okay, the symbolic. This is the official Israeli term for this. Rocket fire was a response to those widespread state-sponsored pogroms against the Palestinian population. And those fucking rockets haven't got warheads on them, and whenever you see people start talking about all the fucking rockets and how terrible that is, ask them how many people have died due to those rockets. Other Israelis, people on the landing end of them, civilians, since say 2000. The number is smaller than the number of people who've died of COVID-19 in Vietnam. Practically nobody, because they don't generally do any damage, and it's nothing to do with Iron Dome. Iron Dome is bullshit. They're just not capable of doing any damage unless they just get up a nice bit of speed, and then they can make a hole in something just from the impact force. But these are not, I mean, they're talked about as if they're some sort of ICBMs, but the reality is, New Year's Eve in Berlin, you see more fucking explosive power.
Israeli cities and Israeli towns. And you have Israel doing what any other government on planet Earth would do, which is trying to defend.
Which is trying to ethnically cleanse majority Palestinian areas.
And its citizens from terrorist rocket fire by going after the people firing the rockets.
The people firing the rockets aren't in Fahm, Lid, or fucking Sheikh Jarrah. Yeah, notice he's very skillfully not even talking about that, and that's telling. Because if this guy, I mean, his entire job is to do propaganda for U.S.-Israeli atrocities. If he thought that there was a way to make his target audience think that was a good thing, he'd be showing us right now. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe he'll be showing us pretty soon, but he seems to have skipped it over it completely, which tells me he knows that this shit, there's just no way to put a happy face on that bullshit. By the way, how'd you find me, by the way? Do we know each other under another name by any chance?
Hamas makes it hard. They hide in civilian areas. They fire from civilian areas.
They're in the most densely populated area in the world. I mean, see, here's the thing. There's plenty wrong with Hamas. That's not the issue here. It doesn't fucking matter. But guess what? Everything he's saying right now could be and was said about the Geoguessr, the Warsaw Ghetto resistance. Because guess what? They were also stuck in extremely narrow space. What weapons they had to keep them in their homes or other civilian areas, because that's all there was. I mean, it's the same thing with Gaza. It's not like they actually have military areas in Gaza. They haven't got any. And by the way, the Israeli Defense Ministry, a legitimate military objective, right in the middle of a residential civilian area. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, what he's describing is what every single ghetto resistance force in World War II was forced to do because there's just no other way.
Israel does everything in its power to take out the terrorists without harming innocent civilians. It's not an easy challenge.
Fucking bombing the tallest tower block in Gaza. I mean, what's remarkable here, I kind of thought maybe it would be something, maybe they'd have come up with a new line at this point. This is the same bullshit that I was debunking back in 2009. Word for word. This is the exact same shit. They haven't been able to come up with anything new.
But when you look at other armies that have faced these difficult counterterrorism challenges, you see that Israel manages it extraordinarily well. What's a shame is Israel's put in this position in the first place of having to defend itself.
Yeah. See, the trouble is that that's not actually called defending it. When you mow down an occupied population in territory that you occupy because of your own aggression, it's not self-defense. It doesn't even matter if they shoot back. In fact, the only people who can legally be described as engaging in any kind of self-defense here are the Palestinians. I mean, that's just the only way.
If Hamas did not fire rockets at Israel, Israel would be out of Gaza.
Yeah, that's complete bullshit. In fact, by Israel's own admission, when Israel actually agrees to ceasefires, it's been Hamas usually offering them, and Israel usually responds with massacres. Hamas actually very scrupulously observes these ceasefires. This is by Israel's own admission. I mean, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs actually has figures on this because it's such an important propaganda point for them. And where the ceasefires are, there are no rockets from Hamas. That's even when Israel does not abide by the ceasefires, and they have yet to abide by a single one. Because a ceasefire means an end to hostilities. A fucking blockade that's keeping out food, medicine, and reconstruction supplies? That's a hostility. If you're going to have a ceasefire, you have to stop doing that shit too. And they have refused.
A lot of people, when we bring this up with people, they say Israel's trying to encroach and they're colonizing these different places. This is why Hamas and Palestine has to react this way. What is your reaction to when people say that?
It's a longer story than we have time to get into, but
yes, because the thing is, it's actually true what he just said, and he doesn't have a good answer for it. And, I mean, it's actually kind of nice to see these pricks get tongue-tied to the extent that they have to sort of move these subjects off to another day so we don't have to talk about so that they don't have to try to justify these things and come up with some line of bullshit that they weren't prepared to give. I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised that usually I would expect the person in something like this who's being interviewed to have been given the questions. I would expect this to be scripted. But clearly, he didn't know this question was coming because he isn't prepared to answer it. And the guy asking it doesn't realize what a big hole it actually knocks in the propaganda this guy's here to spew.
But basically, you have two nationalisms competing in a small space. You have Zionism, Jewish nationalism, Israel, and then you have Palestinian nationalism, often combined with Islamism, that doesn't want the Jewish state to exist.
First of all, see, here's an anti-Semitic trope that you hear a lot. Israel is not the Jewish state. It's not a Jewish state. It is the state of the Zionist movement. Most Zionists are not Jewish. In the U.S. alone, there are 150 million Zionists. On the entire planet, there are 14 million Jews, and not all of us are Zionists. I'm not one. So, yeah, we are a tiny minority in the movement that state represents. And the idea of calling it the Jewish state, which, like, Israel itself loves to do, is to sort of lump us together with their shit in order to create this sort of false equivalency where we get blamed for their shit. It creates more anti-Semitism, which is actually something the Zionist movement thrives on, because the only Jews who are going to move over to their little colonial regime over there are Jews who are scared. So a situation where we get blamed for their shit creates more scared Jews, more likely. And so it's beneficial. And anti-Semites like this prick, I mean, they don't need a justification for liking anti-Semitism. It's just that his job is to be anti-Semitic.
In Israel. Israel's offered multiple times, and this is the PragerU video I did. I talk about the 5 times, 1937, 1947, 1967, 2000, 2008.
Yeah, this is going to be bullshit. First of all, because Israel didn't exist in 1937 or 1947. So Israel didn't offer anything. Second of all, these are, he's like describing the immediate preludes to times when Israel has either engaged in mass ethnic cleansing against the indigenous Palestinian population, or taken over more land, or done both. So, yeah, I mean, these generous offers always turn out to be complete bullshit.
Israel's offered, the Israelis say, hey, we have rights to the entire land, but for the sake of peace, we'll share it with you.
Except they don't have rights to the entire land. And they've never offered to share it with the Palestinians. In fact, the whole point, there's something called the demographic problem. And in Israeli political discourse, it's a big one and has been for a long time. The issue is they can't maintain an artificial Jewish settler majority within the state, and they consider that important because they want to be, at least pretend to be kind of democratic. And if they become a minority within their colonial regime, then they can't even pretend to be democratic at that point. So there's never been an interest in sharing the land. There has been an interest in kicking as many Palestinians off as possible. In fact, the official formulation is maximum Jews on maximum land, minimum Palestinians on a minimum land.
We don't want to, quote unquote, occupy you. We don't want to have a military presence in your population center.
Funny, they don't want to, and yet they've been doing that the entire fucking time. Incidentally, I was actually just playing chess before this. I sort of play chess, then I do stuff like this, and then I play more chess. So you just came in right on when I'm doing something else. I am taking a break from the chess and doing dunking on these assholes.
Tragically and unfortunately, the Palestinian leadership has turned down every one of these compromises.
Because none of them have been compromises.
Often quite violently. And thus Israel has to face a situation.
Yeah, see, he skipped over 1948 when Israel expelled 750,000 Palestinians. They and their descendants have never been allowed back. And that's actually how much of the population of Gaza ended up there.
Situation where if it does not have a military presence in the West Bank, the absence of Israel's military presence opens the door to terror cells, terror labs, and waves of terrorism.
Yeah, no. Because the thing is, the whole reason there's Palestinian resistance is that there's this colonial regime on their land. If they didn't have the colonial regime on their land, they wouldn't have to fight.
Israel pulled every last soldier and civilian out of Gaza as an effort to jumpstart peace. Israel...
No, actually, they didn't. I mean, they actually very explicitly said this was nothing to do with peace. It was to do with cutting their losses. They needed to beef up the illegal settlements in the West Bank, and they were using huge numbers of soldiers in order to provide security for about 4,000 wildly racist paramilitary settlers. So it just made more sense to them, from their standpoint, to move the racist paramilitary settlers, the couple of thousand of them, over to the several million, I mean, not several million, but a couple of million anyway, racist settlers over in fucking the West Bank because it would just be more efficient. And that was it. That was the entire justification. Later on, they start saying, "Oh, this was just for peace." But I mean, peace has been offered to them by Hamas in Gaza for years, and their response each time is actually to, massacre.
Israel does not have any soldiers or civilians in Gaza anymore. But what we saw there tragically again is the rejection of the fig leaf, or the rejection of
The fig leaf. That's so good. That's so good. Did he not realize when he just did that? Wow, that is so Freudian. He meant the olive branch. But he knows perfectly well what bullshit it is. Look at the way he's like fucking grinning so ghoulishly as he tells these lies. And so he says the fig leaf. That is classic. Okay, let's move on though. Let's see if he has anything to say about these pogroms.
be up in arms if Israel annexed the West Bank and Gaza tomorrow and offered citizenship to everyone, which is, if you're not an apartheid state, you offer citizenship to everyone who lives under your jurisdiction. Everyone would be up in arms about that because they want the West Bank and Gaza not to be under Israeli rule. They want.
Also, because this hypothetical is complete nonsense. Israel does not want to offer citizenship. They very specifically don't want to. They do not want millions more Palestinian voters than they already have. When you count the entire Palestinian population on both sides of the Green Line, it's 50-50. The Jewish settler population is about 50%. The Palestinian population is about 50%. In fact, there are some figures that suggest that actually it's slightly more on the Palestinian side. They have no intention of granting them citizenship. In fact, they speak quite openly about just expelling them.
The West Bank and Gaza to be an independent Palestinian state. If Israel annexed it, it would be a land grab. It would be a human rights violation. It would be killing the two-state dream.
Okay, and this guy, like, what year did they thaw him out from? Because nobody's talking about okay, like, people who are totally full of shit talk about two states. Two states has not been the thing that anyone has been calling for. Two states, by the way, is apartheid. That was actually the end game of the apartheid in South Africa, was to get all these Bantustans, these little reservations, recognized as independent states so that the apartheid regime could wash their hands of them. That two states is literally apartheid. But, nobody's calling for that because it's just ridiculous. Where the hell are they? You have the entire West Bank is full of these fucking settlements that are designed to ensure that there is no way that there could be Palestinian territory that's contiguous. And Israel does not offer two states. They very specifically refuse to offer any kind of independence, even to these Palestinian Bantustans that they have, even though they like to wash their hands of it. What people have been talking about for quite some time now, particularly in the connection to the BDS campaign, is of course fucking equal rights for all of the people living under current Israeli jurisdiction. An end to the race laws, just full equal citizenship, the right to return for all the refugees who were forcibly kicked out of the country, out of their homes back in 48 and since, and an end to the occupation. That's what people are talking about. I'm talking about two states. Where the hell does he even come from with this bullshit? This was streamed today, and he's still talking about this crap.
So they would complain if Israel did that. Israel hasn't done that. Instead, Israel has offered these territories to the Palestinians for their own state.
No, it hasn't. Israel is continuing to take these territories every single day. There's basically nothing to it, and there's practically nothing left. If you actually look at a map, and of course he hasn't brought one. He could easily find one in his line of work. But the thing is, the minute you show somebody a map of what these territories look like, you can see the problem.
But when Israel offered it to the Palestinians of the West Bank in 2000, they didn't say yes. They didn't come back with a generous counteroffer.
Because there was no offer, and why the fuck should the Palestinians be generous? Israel is on their fucking land. Israel is not even offering the absolute minimum that by law Palestinians are entitled to. Look at that guy, he have a fucking little grin here because he knows how full of shit he is.
They started a wave of terrorism called the Second Intifada.
The second intifada, that's complete bullshit. And of course, it wasn't in response to a generous Israeli offer. There wasn't one. Even the guy who that offer is attributed to acknowledges that. Because it would have been bad for him politically to be seen to make any kind of offer, generous or otherwise.
That ultimately killed over 1,000 Israelis, Jews, Muslims, and Christians.
Oh, that's cute. Did you see what he did there? Jews, Muslims, and Christians. That's to say, 1,000, and that includes Palestinians with Israeli passports, you see. So what he's doing is he's actually lumping together all of the Palestinians with Israeli citizenship who were killed by Israel, and presenting it as if this was the people. This was the figure of the people killed by Palestinians.
Palestinian Authority. A young generation of entrepreneurs. They're building boutique hotels, chef restaurants. They're starting startups. There's a venture capital culture coming to Ramallah. It's the most exciting thing I've seen in a long time.
Yes, because it's something you can.
Because the day a young Palestinian, a bright young Palestinian says, my future is in building a business instead of building a bomb, and the choice is theirs. They have moral authority.
Information. Why does it matter that people hear them? It's because we are actually influencing people. It's because people are hearing what we have to say. They know that it's actually the truth. They know that conservatism has a sort of pull to it.
Yeah, a very small pull to it, and also if there was any truth in here, so far we haven't seen any. It isn't even particularly novel bullshit. Let me see, what else have we got here?
We really are the big fish when it comes to conservative media, and that places a really big target on our back. I think we're fully aware of that. We've experienced.
Yeah, it really says to me that they're the big fish. I mean, God, they're certainly the ones that have been left out in the.
Donate, everyone. We really appreciate it. And also, if you're in the YouTube, you can super chat. I think. I think you can. Yeah, and that helps us. That helps us out too. But going to the website is definitely best if you can.
Yeah, we're fighting for an America that's going to be, the best for everybody who's here. We want everybody to be successful, and a lot of other countries do not have that opportunity. And that leads us into our next video.
Wow.
Smooth.
I was going to do a smooth transition. I wasn't even allowed to.
No, you fucking weren't.
You stole it from us.
I didn't know you were going to do a smooth transition.
Okay. Here we go. Well, since...
Okay, I was kind of... It was interesting to see just how completely lacking in new propaganda they really are. Where are you from, by the way, if you're still around? Oh, Alabama. I have an uncle down there. I think I'm going to play a little bit of chess. Usually I only do this from 12 to 2 a.m. You're in my same time zone, so that'll be 12 to 2 a.m. for you, too. But, have a glass of water because my throat is parched. Talking on this thing for 2 hours straight will make you thirsty. So, actually... Why don't we play some... let's play some more Blitz. Fuck it, I did fairly well at Blitz earlier. Okay. Time is a river. There's a poetic name. Neat. Okay. Oh, he did move. I just didn't see it. Ready opening. I was looking for something in the center. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, well, hey. If you're gonna let me push d4, I'm gonna push d4. What part of Alabama? Oh, he's really exposing his queen quite nicely. Ah, my uncle lives in Huntsville, or he did the last time I heard from him, which is getting on a while now. I was down there once back in the 1990s, saw the Space Center, and watched MST3K Turkey Day in his den. Didn't see all that much of it. Of course, I was like 13 at the time, so my exploring opportunities were limited. Okay, this actually looks like theory. I think time is a river might be an interesting opponent. He's being very careful not to. He's not engaging yet. And I think... Okay, the big... Oh, shit. Okay. Well, no, he needs to... that light squared bishop. I was gonna say I had 2 moves away from forking his queen and his rook, but his light squared bishop is right there. So that's, I mean, that's not gonna work unless he gets rid of it. Moves it to someplace else, but I can certainly pin that pawn there. Oh, he doesn't want me to pin that pawn there. Or they don't want me to pin that pawn there. I don't know if it's a he. Of course. Maybe get something going over here on the king side. Okay. So, sort of it's a very solid sort of thing he's got going on here, just advancing the pawn slowly. He hasn't developed actually all that much, apart from the moving that rook to get out of the pin. So I guess he's got plans for pushing d5, maybe. But I mean, look, his rook, knight, bishop, and queen are all right where they started. I mean, and the rook's only gone 1 space over. I'm up in Ohio right now. Taking their time. Ah, yeah, that's right. Pushing d5. I knew it. Okay, do we want to take that? Okay, we've opened up a nice little diagonal. Do I want to take that? And then what? So we take this. Yeah, fuck it. This is blitz. I'm not going to calculate for too long. No, that's not a knight. I can think of cooler things than being in Ohio personally. I'm basically stuck here because of the pandemic. I was visiting family when it hit, and I just couldn't get back. Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Oh, shit. No, that isn't lovely. Can't believe I just did that. Well, it's Blitz. There's a chance that they'll fuck up too, just like that. The lure of free stuff. Okay. Fuck it. That's always a great rationale for making a move in chess. That, yeah, fuck it. But, oh, I can pin this rook to the king and maybe get back where I ought to be materially. Or not. Is there no way I can maintain that? There's no way I can maintain that. But I can do this. Potentially set up a mating attack for when things clear up a little bit. Yeah, this sucks. Just retreat that for the moment. Okay.